This is an encouragement to writers who need encouragement. It's my Substack. I'm Robert Beatty. I'm a New York Times best-selling author. One of my books was adapted into a movie. I had worldly success, but for a long time I had minor success. So it can happen, and I know we're all at different, anyone likely to be seeing this is likely to be various stages in your career. And I know encouragement helped me when times were discouraging. So I'll just share a little bit here. Persevere, writer. Aspiring writers and writers having a dry spell should persevere, even when insulted or when you feel insulted. Persevere. Write, rewrite. Put your effort and attention into the craft of writing. If you're writing for submission, submit your writing. After decades of frustration in one field, I had swift and unexpected commercial publishing success. In 2005, my book rose as high as number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list. It was adapted into a movie, and I had many things that I had never considered to be plausible in my own life happen. When I traveled from Wichita, Kansas to New York City to visit my literary agent in person, we'd only talked on the phone and exchanged emails and I think faxes back then. I nodded to J.D. Salinger in the hallway. He was just departing the literary agent's Harold Ober office as I was arriving. When I checked in with the receptionist, she said, "You just missed J.D. Salinger." My agent was Jake Elwell, who at one time had been Dan Brown's literary agent. Elwell was not Salinger's agent, but Salinger was represented by the Harold Ober Literary Agency, and now Dan Brown had a different agent. Now, if you don't know who Dan Brown, J.D. Salinger, Harold Ober, and the New York Times bestseller list, if you don't know who they are and what they mean, and about having your published book adapted into a movie, and you don't know about meeting many Hollywood executives, Hollywood actors, that's irrelevant to the point. You may achieve unexpected success by perseverance. I used to tell this story at writers' conferences, and I was very pleased that over the years, every so often, someone would later tell me that they did persist, inspired specifically by my talk and my encouragement, and they were published, traditionally published. Literary agent Jake Elwell is now retired, as am I, told me that my book created a cottage industry in BTK and BTK knockoff stories. What my audiences of aspiring true crime book writers found hard to believe was that my book had been rejected by 8 literary agents who represented true crime writers, and by 8 acquisitions editors at true crime book publishers. I wrote the first book published about the BTK serial killer. Full story is very long with many twists and turns, but I'll abbreviate it. In 2003-2004, 8 literary agents turned down my BTK book query or proposal. Now, at that time, self-publishing was not common. I mean, it did happen, but it wasn't common. And if you were self-published, you probably paid a printer to print hardback books. So after the agents turned me down, I contacted publishers directly, and acquisitions editors turned down the book. That's 16 turndowns from August 2003 to March 2004 when BTK resurfaced with his message, "Let Beatty know." What did the code mean? Landwehr asked. He told Rader the FBI cryptologist could not figure it out. It meant let Beatty know for his book, Rader said. Hearst Laviana had quoted the lawyer, me, in his January 2004 BTK story. Rader was clearly baffled at how the cops could have missed the meaning of that coded message. That's from Roy Wensel's book. Now, I don't believe it either. They didn't. After I heard that, I had been in Mensa in national offices, and I'd met a lot of people in the various SIGs, S-I-G, special interest groups, clubs within Mensa Club. And I contacted code breakers, code breaking SIG, and they all said they didn't believe it either, because they do that to screw with each other, misspell what should be the key, and change one letter. And that's what Rader did. He misspelled a word, but it shouldn't have been. One Mensa code breaker who didn't follow the BTK story was given the same information, and he solved it in 10 minutes. So I do not believe this story. Either probably the FBI is just lying, and the Wenzel published what they had. So anyway, after it became a national story, agents and publishers contacted me directly. So here it is, April 10th, 2005, the New York Times book review, paperback bestsellers. They divide them into fiction and nonfiction, and I'm here at 4. Nightmare in Wichita by Robert Beatty, NAL Penguin. I was kind of pleased to be listed with other writers who I admired, Malcolm Gladwell, John Grisham, writer, legislator, Jared Diamond. I was always impressed with Jared Diamond. Here's Dan Brown, Angels and Demons. And you get far enough down here, you come to this guy who was an aspiring writer, Barack Obama. He complained nobody showed up at his book signing. So I think times got better for him after April 2005. Jodi Picoult. All the women I knew were reading Jodi Picoult at the time. So if you pay attention to any sport, you'll read where a coach says, "We know our business." This is often in direct contradiction to the evidence, their won-loss record, their mismanagement of the clock or personnel. Often those coaches are fired, but not always. This is just before I did a book signing in Borders Books. A stack of my books there. Now, I do have to wonder about literary agents and acquisitions editors like I wonder about coaches. I only contacted those whose business was publishing true crime books. You'd think they'd be experts in their own field, and none of them thought that the BTK story would lead to a profitable book. Well, I'm not looking for a literary agent or traditional publisher. I fulfilled my contract with Penguin a few years back. To fulfill my contract, I submitted a book to Penguin, and they turned it down flat and immediately. I sent the email with attachment on Friday, and on Monday I received a rejection message. So fine, life went full circle. From years of impersonal rejections to success and applause from my publisher and staff, and then back to rejection. Actually, many things puzzled me about traditional commercial publishing back in 1974 when I submitted my first complete book, and they still publish me today. Now, I have a handful of written books I may self-publish. Anyway, now this is from Larry McMurtry's memoir, A Literary Life. In fact, there's the cover. Larry McMurtry, Literary Life. Best-selling, Pulitzer Prize winning, and Oscar winning writer. He says often at his lectures he reminds would-be writers that many of the novelists and short story writers that they admire had to write 2 or 3 unpublished efforts before they finally broke through. Look back at literary history suggests this has long been the case. Ken Kesey, for example, wrote 2 novels prior to Cuckoo's Nest. Now, McMurtry is a bad example, and people too often point at outliers. McMurtry's first book, while it didn't sell immediately, it was bought by the movies, made into a movie, it became a hit movie, and then his book sold. So he didn't have several efforts. But he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to write books, so he went to college, got a degree in English literature, bachelor's and master's, and just, Robert B. Parker did the same thing, except he went on and got his doctorate, and they had success. Now, your life's like mine, you have other things going on. Yesterday, I held my most recent great-grandchild. I have 3 great-grandchildren. And my wife needs surgery. We're waiting to hear when we go. So other things are going on in my life, and they're going on in your life. You have things going on besides writing. But I still say, persist. Now, back then, in August 2003, there is a new thing, sending inquiries by email. I bought a writer's market at Barnes & Noble and spent days checking to see who accepted inquiries by email. Almost everyone in August 2003 required physical letters and would not accept inquiries by email. I sent 1 query by email. Then I had a basement home office, and I walked upstairs and told my wife what I'd done. Now, she's the one that had said I should write a book about BTK. And so I told her, and I emphasized, and she already understood, inquired by email was very unusual in August 2003. The vast majority of literary agents did not want to be contacted by email. So I went back downstairs and already had the reply. The literary agents wanted a full proposal by mail, which I hadn't written. I went back upstairs, told my wife, and then I wrote the proposal. It took me about 2 weeks, and I mailed it. And then it was 3 months later, I had a form rejection letter, sent a self-addressed stamped envelope, and so my proposal was returned. Sample chapters and complete outline. When I was a young man, I took boxing lessons and karate lessons. Now, you're being hit as part of the lessons, and sometimes you're hit in the face. I was hit in the face. I didn't like it, but after a while, I got used to it. So you start sending out proposals, inquiries, books, and they get rejected. So it's like getting hit in the face. Certainly the chest, at least. So they're in a business today to make profit, not to develop writers. But McMurtry writes again in his memoir, Literary Life, at one time, there were vastly more publishers than today. There were about 100 publishers in the U.S. who would publish and carry a writer, gambling that he or she would develop into a prosperous investment. But that's past. That's a long time ago. Even before that, there were, Maxwell Perkins editors who would fix the book by Ernest Hemingway and so forth. But that era is in the past. I still meet people who don't really know much about this business at all, and they'll say, well, so you send it and then you got an editor that fixes it and they publish it. It's not that way. I mean, yes, there are editors and they, copy editors, but it's not personal, it's business. Now, self-publishing, anybody can do that now. I'm gonna just briefly, I think I'm just gonna skip this part here. It's just, I'm pointing out there is an element of luck in your career. McMurtry says that, everybody says that. If they say that's not true, well, they're just lying to you. Like here, this old guy, crackpot, there's no such thing as luck, yeah. Now, here was an element of luck that I had. In the 9th grade, you're very lucky if at some point you have a English teacher, English professor who wants you to submit writing. Pat Conroy writes about his English teacher. Mine was Bruce Cowdery. He told me to start writing for submission. I'm in the 9th grade. He said a terrible defect in our education system, especially for writers, is that you only write for one person, the teacher. He assigned me to write for the school paper and to start writing for submission. Now, I didn't want to write for the school paper and they didn't want me there. It was a clique. So after a bit, he took me off the hook for the school paper, but I still had to submit pieces, so I had to submit them to the local newspaper, and pretty soon I was hired to write a column called Teen Talk. I did that for years. So here's me as a teen. My final Teen Talk column was published March 27, 1974. So that's more than 51 years ago. I've been a paid published writer for close to 6 decades. Not close, but Now, then I graduated high school, and for the first half of my working life, I worked as a blue-collar machinist, maintenance man, firefighter, EMT. This is me, in front of my B-1. This was at McConnell Air Force Base. Actually, this was an open house, which was the only time we could take pictures. But and then here I'm with some of the guys. That's Kavanaugh. He's an author. He wrote a very good book on high-angle rescue. That's might still be used all around the country in fire departments. That's me, much younger. This is back in that 1980s. And there's Patrick Allen Hamilton, and Hambo, as he was called, and I both became lawyers, and later we had a case together in the United States Supreme Court. Yes, it's an interesting story, and no, he doesn't want me to tell it, so I'll respect his wishes. So, I was firefighter, medic for years. Got a attaboy letter from Abe Goo, who's president of Boeing Military Airplane Company at the time. Got an attaboy letter from the director of the Wichita Sedgwick County EMS when I was on the Wichita Sedgwick County EMS. This is back in 1980. Something had happened earlier. Yeah, June 21st. Larry Shannon. So then I finished my first degree. No, I have 2 degrees before I left to go to law school. And so the second half of my working life, I was a white-collar worker. Human resources management. I was an attorney, trial and appellate, and worked as adjunct faculty. Did that quite a few years. So there's my Bachelor of Science degree in Human Resources Management. Practice law. Here is 55 F 3rd 542, 1995, Roman v. Cessna and Boeing. It's an antitrust law case in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. And I was the lead. I prevailed. I was a lead attorney on that one. Then this is a case Pat and I took to the Supreme Court. It's called Petition for Writ of Certiorari. It's front of the Kansas Supreme Court. We lost there and tried. And there's Hamilton and Beatty. So this is all writing. I keep meeting people that think it's not right. We had to write a lot as attorneys. So I was in the, I had the lead column in the 2nd edition of the Newman Review, a scholarly journal published by the Gerber Institute for Catholic Studies. So, had a list of the authors. Here's my summary, Robert Beatty, and I was an adjunct professor in humanities. So, the entire time from the 9th grade, the 1960s, until the ballpark of 2009, for over 40 years, I was submitting pieces and proposals for publication. Some were accepted, some were not. Now, this is in the Kansas Trial Lawyers Association, July 2000. I had the lead column. I had lead column 3 different times in the Journal of the Kansas Trial Lawyers Association. This was a debate. Should district judges be appointed or elected? I said elected. And I prevailed in the vote, too. This is a rejection letter. I have very few that I kept. This was July 7, 1998. And it's rejected my novel, Jesus Jurors. And nope, got turned down on that. I submitted to other places. They all turned it down. So, another thing that Larry McMurtry says in his book, and this one I agree with, now you should persevere. Worldly success may or may not arrive, but the satisfaction is in your craft, in the actual writing of a book you're reasonably happy with. It's also true, every book, no book is finished, it's just abandoned. So you have to stop at some time. And McMurtry goes into detail, he saves a box of books. You'd think he's really happy. And he said, I didn't feel really happy. The happiness that he had felt was when he was finishing the book and he was satisfied. And that's also what I experienced. Every time you publish, you get a box of books from the publisher. You open the book. I always took out the first copy, signed it to my wife, handed it to my wife. I didn't open the box till she was home if she was out. And but she was happy. But my happiness had been in the writing and rewriting of the book. So, I encourage you to persevere, and you may have your book signing in a bookstore, not Borders, they went out of business. You know, Amazon is really missing out. They should have bookstores, just mainly for people can go in. You know, it's like places you don't have to buy the books there, but you can do book signings. I mean, you're really missing out. You could do constant book signings. I don't mean a bookstore everywhere, but a handful of bookstores around the country. Make it really nice. Have places to eat. So people come in, have a bite to eat, then go to get in line for the book signing. I actually thought about starting that business myself since the current online publishers don't seem to be, I could rent places. So, anyway, persevere, writer, and derive satisfaction from your attention to the craft of writing.